Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 10, the season finale of HBO's Winning Time, entitled Promised Land. Pretty pretty, I guess on the nose title for this episode. The Lakers do reach the Promised Land at the end of this episode and at the end of this season. But one thing that I found really interesting about this episode in particular is that I think this episode was probably a lot of what people might have expected this show to be coming into it. You know, this episode was pretty much an entirely basketball game being played episode. You know, most of this show has not had a lot of actual game footage. When I say game footage, I don't mean actual real life Lakers footage, but I mean like, scenes of them actually playing basketball. And I think a lot of people probably expected that coming in. It hasn't been that, but I think this episode, even though this episode was that, I think it works because of all the groundwork that they laid in the previous 9 episodes, so that even though this is mostly a basketball game, we do see the culmination of a lot of different storylines and see those things kind of just how they panned out. And through the lens of this basketball game, we see the progression for certain characters and storylines from episode 1 to episode 10. And I think this episode does a great job of wrapping up those storylines, giving you something thrilling to watch, an entertaining game, and just being wrapping up an entertaining season of an entertaining show. I know I said entertaining a bunch of times, but I think it's important because a lot of times I come on here and I'll talk about a show and I'll, talk about, the way it's written, the way it's shot, these technical aspects of it that I think make it good, or how they've developed characters and whatnot. And very little attention I think I give to sheer entertainment value. Now, granted, when a show is that good, like a show like Succession or Better Call Saul, the entertainment value is high because the quality of the show is high. But sometimes you just want to watch something just fucking fun to watch. And Winning Time was that show for me this year. I don't sit in front of you guys and give like this in-depth picking apart of every episode of Winning Time. I talk about it because I enjoyed the show, but this is one of those ones where I almost wish I didn't review it so I could really just sit back and enjoy it without having to look at it from like this analytical place. But really solid season of this show, an incredibly entertaining show, creatively done, creative with even the personalities and story arcs as well. But lots of good stuff. So let's talk about this final episode. So like I said, it was the end of a lot of the main storylines. And they kind of play out through the lens of this finals game. We get to NBA Game 5 of the finals, which is pretty much this entire episode. They don't even spend any time on the first 4 games. They bring you right into Game 5 with the fact that the series is tied at 2. So we spend all this time in Game 5, but we do wrap up these plot lines. I think the first big one that they kind of wrap up, and I don't want to say they wrap it up because the decision was already made, but kind of see the full circle of the coaching situation. The whole season, I think it was between 2 kind of like main storylines. Jerry Buss trying to make miracles happen in order to pay for this team, and trying to find this coach. We had several episodes before they even had a coach. Then we had the whole drama with what happened with McKinney, and then figuring out whether or not McKinney was going to get brought back, whether or not Westhead was going to keep the job, bringing in Pat Riley, his story from being like this, from Chick Hearn's assistant essentially to, being an assistant coach on the team. And I think they wrapped this up really nicely with it was what really happened with them winning the championship, but I think they gave Jason Segel a good opportunity to do, one of his little monologues that's like some Shakespeare shit or whatever. But the one that he did in the locker room at halftime, I thought was really good. And you could see the impact that it had on the players. But, they played out this coaching thing for the whole season. And it's remarkable to me because on paper, I would feel like that would not be interesting at all. But they made it interesting. And I enjoyed watching the coaching battle that happened here. Spoiler alert for any future seasons, Pat Riley's going to take over from this point on. So there will be no more coaching controversies here. I believe I believe both McKinney and Westhead find jobs in the following season, but I don't think McKinney is around long, if I remember correctly from what I read. But yeah, that was a good ending to this storyline. It was good seeing them be able to get that championship despite having to deal with all the McKinney stuff. And yeah, they managed to take something that was boring on paper and make it entertaining. And like I said, we also had the end of Jerry Buss's storyline, which really revolved around him trying to do the swan paddle, which I thought it was good to see that kind of come full circle. Speaking of, actually, before I get to that, speaking of coming full circle, also with the coaching side aspect of the storyline, we had okay, McKinney was obsessed, right? He was obsessed with the team, obsessed with winning. He came up with this big plan, then he got hurt. Westhead takes over, executes on the plan, but then he has almost like a beef with McKinney over who's going to keep the team. McKinney says some shitty stuff to him, but then we get the full circle here as well with McKinney dropping off his notes for, I was sitting around randomly hypothesizing shit that could happen. And I said, what would happen if Kareem went down? Here's my notes on what I thought we would have to do if Kareem goes down with an injury. And I like how they had it where Magic brings up the idea of him playing center, sells Westhead on it, Westhead agrees, and then he looks at the notes and sees that's what McKinney said too. Nice touch. But back to the full circle for Jerry Buss, they did that with the Swan thing too, having him paddle at the end of episode 1, and then bringing that full circle to talk about Swan songs in episode 10. And even though that didn't happen, this wasn't his Swan song, but I still like the metaphor there being played out and coming around full circle from episode 1 to episode 10. But he spends his whole time trying to make sure he could pay off the bank, having to pull off all of these tricks to just to keep things afloat. He gets Claire to essentially to give him paperwork that says, everything played out the way we needed. We needed the playoffs. We needed big sales, big ticket sales, future season ticket sales. All that worked out. We should be able to pay off the bank. All good. I just need a signature, and the person who needs to sign it is dead. So you got to find a new treasurer. And I like the fact that, well, actually, no, I'll save this piece for when I talk about Jeannie. But he does end up naming Claire as this VP and treasurer, and I think it, again, good playing out of the Jerry Buss storyline throughout this season, coming full circle with the Swan Song thing, but also just having it, setting the stakes, watching the kind of ups and downs of whether or not he's going to be able to make this happen, and then ending with everything panning out. And I don't know if during the course of this first season, if in reality Jerry Buss had his back against the wall this many times as he did in this show, but I'm fine with the creative license to add a little bit of dramatic effect to the show. But whether that's true or not, it was very well done storytelling. We also see, the relationship between Magic and Kareem progress, grow, and become something special by the end of the season. Again, full circle, right? We start the season, these two are at odds. They do not like each other. By the end of the season, as in both the NBA season and this season of television, the two of them are getting along pretty well. They share a great scene in the car when Kareem tells Magic that he's not going to be able to play in Game 6. And the whole thing about hugs, you keep winning, I'm going to give you 81 more hugs. And him saying you owe me one more. I thought that, again, great scene, but great full circle development of the relationship between the two of them. So thought that was really good stuff that they did there as well. One of the less prominent stories, but more significant meaning, I think, was the Jeannie Buss storyline. She wanted to make her name for herself in a male-dominated industry. She had all these great ideas, but nobody really wanted to give her a shot, even though her father is the owner. I made a lot of weird verbal mistakes during this video, but he won't even give her a chance. And I think it's interesting that when presented with an opportunity to fill a very important role on the team, Buss asked his daughter to essentially scout his sons and help pick which one of them should take the job. And again, smart move by the show here by not showing the Suns throughout the entire season, because I didn't even know that there was going to be any Suns in this show. So for him to bring in the Suns, it helps to add to the idea of, rather than give you guys the woman you've been seeing all season, give you the reward of putting her in that role, I'm going to entertain the idea of two people you have not seen at all this season. And that's got to be how Jeannie feels. Like, I've been here this whole time. I've proven myself. And now you want to bring in two people who ain't did shit and give them a chance because they're men and I'm a woman. You know, the bus dynamic with women throughout this series has been interesting. But I think that's the best. It's the best storytelling wise, but obviously it's a terrible way for him to be. But I think the best example of his behavior is having this important role open. Consider two men who we have not seen at all throughout the course of the show, who have done nothing to earn it, while he has two women who have earned it directly in front of him. And I think that was so smart to not even feature these guys in the show, because that makes it feel even more egregious that he would look to one of those two just because they're men when he has two very, very capable women directly in front of him. So it was good for us to see Claire get that role. But now what's next for Jeannie, right? We know what's next for Jeannie in the long term. But if there's a second season that starts off in the 80-81 season, where do we take the Jeannie Buss storyline since that role was given to Claire? But really great stuff. That's probably one of my favorite aspects of the show, aside from the Kareem Magic dynamic, is the fact that Claire and Jeannie were so capable on this show. And the misogyny of Buss, even as it pertains to his own daughter, was really, really interesting to watch. Lastly, we are treated to another great scene between Wood Harris and Solomon Hughes. Solomon Hughes is who plays Kareem. I can't remember if I talked about it. I'm pretty sure I did. Wood Harris's performance last week, but another great monologue from him this week. Another great moment between the two. I feel like a lot of this show, he talked about, and when I say we, I mean the collective we, not necessarily me and the handful of people who watch this video, because I've been spreading my praise around. But I think that collectively, the talk has mainly been about John C. Reilly and Quincy Isaiah, which is fair. But I think that Solomon Hughes has done an incredible job with Kareem, an incredible job. So great stuff from him. I loved getting that scene again. I loved his scene with Magic in this episode as well, like I mentioned. So really great stuff. I hope that if we get a season 2 that's, you know, a continuation of the Lakers storyline, that Solomon Hughes and Quincy Isaiah get even more to do together, because they were both really great. So I'm going to close out with some thoughts. This is probably the most factually accurate episode of the season. You know, sometimes I'll get here and I'll go, this was real, this wasn't, this was real, this wasn't. Pretty much everything in here was real. So Larry Bird did win Rookie of the Year. I think I mentioned that earlier anyway, in an earlier video, that is. It was by a vote of 63-3. I did not think that was going to be accurate. When they said it on the show, I'm like, I'm going to look that shit up. There's no way he won that big. No, he did. 63-3. That was the final vote count. Kareem did get hurt in Game 5, as we saw at the beginning of this episode, and he did miss Game 6. That was true. Magic did win Finals MVP. He did start Game 6 at center. He did play all 5 positions during the course of that game. He did play almost all of the minutes. I'll get to that in a moment, though. But his stat line, 42 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, 1 block. Hell of a game for Magic Johnson. Mind you, and they mentioned in the episode, but still, it bears repeating, 20-year-old rookie. Game 6 of the Finals, that's what he did. The guy who lost 63-3 for Rookie of the Year. But he did play the whole game. Technically he didn't. He played 47 minutes. Someone named Marty Burns, which very close to Marty Bird, but this is an Ozark. Marty Burns played 1 minute. So what I'm guessing happened is that Magic played the first 47 minutes and they had a comfortable enough lead with 60 seconds left that they took Magic out and put this Burns guy in. And the final score was accurate. I think it was 120 something to 107, 123, 107. The only difference was that the game wasn't as close that late. Like they made it, I think they had it as 103, 101 with like 2 minutes left. which isn't really feasible to when you keep the 123 to 107 score. like you expect me to believe the Lakers scored 24 points in 2 minutes? I don't think so. What did I say? 123 to 107. So sorry. So 20 points in 2 minutes. I don't buy it. But that was the score at one point after a Philadelphia run, but there was about 5 minutes left. So over the course of that last 5 minutes, the Lakers ran away with the game enough to a point where Magic was able to come out. But they only ran 8 guys in that game, and that Marty Burns guy who played 1 minute is one of the 8. So they pretty much ran a 7-man rotation in that game. So everybody played 40 minutes. All the starters anyway. I think maybe one starter played like 39 minutes, something like that. But everybody else played over 40 minutes in that game because they just didn't have the bodies to go around for whatever reason. Maybe they always play a fairly short lineup, but short as in like not as many people, not short in height. But yeah, they only really played 7 guys in that game. So, but there's still a whole lot of interesting stuff to come out of this story. Mind you, episode 1 started with Magic getting his HIV diagnosis. We're a long way away from that. Like, I'm really curious what the long-term plan is for this show. And furthermore, what the long-term plan is for maybe doing other versions of this show. You know, the Showtime Lakers, very much deserving of a story. I'm sure there's, one for the 1960 Celtics that might be worth telling. There's probably one for the whatever year the Bulls won 72 games, 96, I think, 96, 97, somewhere in there. Probably a story for them too. So, really entertaining show. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this finale. I thought everything came full circle. It was well done. Looking forward to season 2 and whatever else they might have in mind for Winning Time. And until then, peace.